Hello. Welcome to this new video. Today we're going to be talking about DMARC, how email authentication works. And email authentication, or I should say email misconfigurations, is one of those vulnerabilities that attackers are exploiting every single day. And so many people, sadly, are falling for that because they're not paying closer attention or they don't have the proper um, antivirus or email configuration settings to detect that type of attacks. Now, let's go into it to see how it works. Let's talk about the different levels of email authentications and what you can do as security professional or network administrator to protect your domain from being spoofed, at least protected to the best of your abilities. So let's go over what I have here. I have a sending server and we have the original email address is my email at mydomain.com, right? And then when that happens, we are setting up this environment in a way that I'm going to be showing you that the email from my domain.coms are being forwarded or sent by a third party. In this case, that third party that is sending the emails, think about it as MailChimp or Constant Content, I believe is the other one, or one of these multiple CRM systems. In this case, the emails are going to be coming from sender at sender-example.com, right? And something that you have to pay attention to is two separate parts in the header. And what does the receiving server checks when it receives the email? It checks for a SPF record and it checks for a DKIM record in DNS for my domain.com to make sure that they match or that they have the proper information. Now, all this information that I'm talking about, remember, all this is going to be in the email headers. And yes, that takes place every single time an email is received on your email server. So that's something that takes milliseconds verifying all that information and doing all the authentication. Now, DKIM is gonna perform a lookup in DNS and it's gonna see that the signature for mydomain.com matches exactly who it says is supposed to be because that was an entry. So in this case, DKIM pass, but SPF fail. So when it comes to DMARC, one of those two have to be true. Either SPF passes and if DKIM fails, it's gonna go. But if DKIM passes and FPS fails, it's gonna go. One of those two have to be true, but if they're both wrong, then it's not gonna go anywhere. You may be asking, what does it mean it's gonna go through? Well, it's gonna go to your inbox and it's gonna go somewhere else, right? That's what it means. Now, is that the end of this story? No, it's not. The reason for that is because this shows the authentication process and what's happening in the background. However, this is the what to me seems to be the most important aspect, and I would say the most important aspect of this video. We need to have a DMARC enforcement policy because as you could see here, everything that took place, if the SPF fails or if DKIM fails or if both SPF and DKIM fails, what's going to happen to that email? So that's going to be dictated by the DMARC policy that the administrator of mydomain.com creates. And what that policy is going to say is what happens if authentication passes or if authentication fails, or what does the receiving server should do with that email. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, it's not what we have in this graph, in this example, but let's say that the authentication fails, right? what's going to happen to that email once it receives it gets to the receiving server? Well, the receiving server is not going to send it back. Well, depending on the policy, it's going to know what to do. Usually, if it doesn't know what to do, it's just going to send it to the junk folder, for instance, right? It's going to send it, hey, listen, I don't know what to do with it, and nobody's telling me what to do with it, so I'm going to send it to junk because I don't trust this thing. That's a good thing. It's not going to bounce it back because there's no policy for that. So that's when it comes to the DMARC enforcement policy. So again, let me say this one more time because sometimes it's confusing. When I was learning this topic, I found it so confusing. I have to go through this like a million times just to know the email flow and how everything ties together. Uh, but so again, the domain administrator of mydomain.com is going to create the DMARC policy telling the receivers what's going to happen with those emails depending on the authentication status of that. And let me bring this back here. And the policies that we have, you can create a DMARC record in DNS. It's going to be number one, it's going to be none, which means that the email is going to, in this case, right? If it's none, it means that no matter what happens, send the email, right? Or do as you wish kind of thing, right? So even if the policy fails right here, like the receiving server is just gonna send them, most likely, as I mentioned before, it's gonna send them to junk. Then we have quarantine, right? Actually, I believe that I was wrong sending it to junk. If it says none, right, it's gonna send it to the junk folder too, such as quarantine. But that decision is gonna be made by the receiver. In this case, when you have the policy as quarantine, the decision is gonna be made by you, the sender, by your DMARC record, and it tells the receiving, hey, if you get this and it's failing, send it to junk. So it's a good thing. I don't know if it sounds confusing, but in this case, if it fails, the receiver is not, most likely it's not going to send them to the inbox. It's going to send it to junk too, even if there's no quarantine. But if there's a quarantine value to it in the policy, it's going to send it to the junk folder, right? And then this is what's the most secure aspect of it, and that is reject, right? If when the value is of the DMARC policy is reject, it means that if it fails the DMARC, right, don't send it to junk. If it fails the DMARC, reject that email. It didn't come from me. That's what my domain is coming when they have that value. If you're seeing that this email that is apparently is coming from me is failing DMARC authentication, don't do like reject that thing. Don't do anything with it, and that is the more secure aspect of it. So administrators, security administrators, or network administrators, you need to pay attention to this value because it may be that you don't know that, but there are attackers sending on your behalf right now, right? Because they're exploiting that vulnerability. Now, in another video, I'm gonna show you how that's done. I'm not gonna do it in this video because it's too long, and I just wanted to go over the concept. But I hope that this provided more useful information to you when it comes to how email authentication works, how the different records, DKIM, SPF, and DMARC works, and what needs to take place for that to be successful, and what you need to do to stop that type of attacks. Again, if you found this information useful, all I ask you to do is to click on the like button, consider subscribing to the channel, and have an amazing day. And I will talk to you next time.